All right, it's that time once again. We are back here at Odd Shopper talking college football on Betting You. You haven't been with us. We're about to dive into all the big games for this Week 11 slate of college football. We're going to talk about the matchups. We're going to talk about the lines. Most importantly, we're going to talk about where we're putting our money to get you started building out your college football card. I am Ben Rasa. That is Matt Gajewski. You guys know the drill. We are in the thick of it now. I say this every week, but it's true. And there's some huge games this week. National championship pitcher is coming into focus. Sir, how are we doing? And what did you think of what we saw last Saturday?
Doing good. I think this week might be even better than what we saw last week. But takeaways before we get there: finish with a 21-16-1 record, littered with L's to be taken, victory laps to be taken as well. Missouri, they continue to be a wagon, even in defeat, covering spreads. Washington demolishing USC. That's a victory lap I think we have to take. USC, they had to block a punt and use all the smoke and mirrors in the world to even get up above 40 points against Washington. And then, of course, they couldn't stop anyone, fired their DC, and the program's in disarray. I added Notre Dame to the card late after Clemson ruled out half their starting defense. And the Fighting Irish continue to be an embarrassment to college football, losing games that they should just outright win. So that was one that I was pretty upset about. And then I keep betting Miami, and they keep losing games that they shouldn't. And I'll probably bet them again because their team is very good. And Cristobal, I'm starting to agree with you that maybe they should look at making him their recruiting director instead of their head coach.
He can't coach. He brings in elite talent. It makes it worse because he has so much to work with. It was a fine week for me too. I was a little frustrated in the spots that A, were the most important, and B, I got the most closing line value, were not the spots that came through. Miami, that closed at 6.5. I had it at 4. I don't even know where you had it.
4 as well, yeah.
Yeah, and they were on the one. They missed a field goal. Then they were on the 1 foot line and couldn't get in, and then they blew the game. More frustrating than that, I also added Notre Dame, but besides that, the under in the Notre Dame game, talk about an embarrassment. It felt like it was going to go over by 80 points, and then it clearly went over. But a pick six, a punt return fumble, the mistakes in that game were so disgusting. And letting Maffa just run over your defense, that was really disappointing because the more I watched that game, the more I realized it really should have been a slugfest.
Yeah, I mean, Cade Klubnik didn't do anything, which is what we expected. But you mentioned all the non-offensive touchdowns that Clemson was able to score. And then, I mean, Notre Dame, I guess, did their part enough. But yeah, I mean, that was a disaster. I guess I don't really have too much else. There's a couple mini things, but most of them are not impactful. I think the other interesting stuff to talk about is just the playoff picture, which I think is really coming around. The most interesting spot to me is the Big 12, where those teams continue to be a wreck outside of Texas. If the conference just ended today, you would see Texas versus Oklahoma State in the Big 12 title game, with Oklahoma State only having 1 loss. And there's a pretty good chance they get there. They have 1 semi-tough game the rest of the way against UCF, where they're favored. Their last 2 games are against Houston and BYU. So we've got a really nice path for Oklahoma State here to face Texas in the Big 12 title. Texas only having, the 1 loss to Oklahoma. I don't know if they're in the playoff if they have 1 loss and everything stands. You've got FSU in the ACC. They're probably going to face Louisville, who has 1 loss and just the easiest schedule known to man. They do face Miami. We'll see if they can get up for it. But then they have a non-con game against Kentucky, which doesn't affect their conference record. So that might be a general wealth betting spot. I'm looking to fade Louisville in that game. Big Ten, you guys know what that is. It's Ohio State. It's Michigan, unless Penn State plays spoiler. Pac-12, Washington controls their own destiny. SEC is Bama and Georgia. Whoever wins that game is getting in. And I think it's likely to be Bama facing Kentucky, Chattanooga, Auburn. Their only real competition at this point is Ole Miss, who has to play Georgia this week. So if it ended today, I think we see Florida State, Washington, Big Ten, SEC champ, whomever wins those conferences.
I would totally agree. Yeah, that was my only other takeaway. Alabama's really getting together. Milroe is awesome. You've been all over that. I really like the way he plays, and he looked pretty good. And then, of course, the final thing before we dive into these games, I watched it. Sam Houston, it took every inch of them to beat the FCS squad that is Kennesaw State, but they got a win with a last-second field goal. So Sam Houston State does have a victory on the year. Let's get into these games, friends. If you want to hit the like button, support this channel. We're going to be at 100,000 probably as you watch this. We're probably over it when you're watching this, and it's because of everyone, all the support. It means the world to us. Michigan and Penn State. Huge game. It's not at night. It's not a whiteout. That's not the end-all be-all, but it's worth noting. It's a 4.5-point spread. Michigan's, like, if you look at dominance metrics and stuff like that, it's the best team ever. But slight caveat, they literally don't play anybody. And now they have a real test. They're a 4.5-point favorite here. So how do you go about breaking down J.J. McCarthy and this team who has truly not been tested?
Yeah, I'm just full passing on the game because of that. Part of it's their fault. They scheduled East Carolina, UNLV, and Bowling Green in the non-con. The rest of it's not their fault. Like Rutgers, Nebraska, Minnesota, Indiana, Michigan State. This is a call to action to get your programs together. Someone please put up more than 10 points in a game against Michigan this year. I have questions about the team. They haven't been able to run the ball in spots, which is concerning because that is the schedule they face this year. Corum and Donovan Edwards haven't been great. They've definitely taken a step back efficiency-wise. I don't know if it's the season-ending injury for Corum that he suffered last year, offensive line changes, but they're still really good. Like, we're just nitpicking here. They're 28th in pass blocking, 3rd in run blocking. Their defense has been electric. Again, they haven't allowed more than 10 points in a game all year. I like a lot of their individual talent, but I just need to see them play a competent opponent before I back them in a spot. So, I mean, Penn State, they haven't really impressed me either, but they at least have some data points against good teams. They played Ohio State. They lost by 8. They also played West Virginia, who's a team that's better than anyone Michigan has faced all year. They demolished them. We know Penn State has an awesome defense. Can they limit J.J. McCarthy, who's been just operating a neutered offense all year long? I mean, maybe. To me, I think the spread is efficient based on what we've seen all year. If I was going to bet a side, I think it would be Penn State, just having more information on them. But I mean, the way I bet games, I think you're just dealing with so much lacking information in this game. Like, I don't know how you possibly bet it.
Not betting it. If I did bet it, I would bet Penn State just because I think that my biggest data point, I guess my two biggest data points is one, I saw them against Ohio State and I thought they played as poorly as they could play. They were almost in the game in the shoe. They're at home. This is a totally different situation. And I think there's a chance that Michigan's just not that good. Michigan might be the best team. They might be like the 30th best team. We really don't know. But I don't really want to pay to find out. Maybe a live spot, if we see that there's some issues. I think that Penn State's defense will have success. I think that Drew Aller will have some chances in this game. I don't really know, though, as you mentioned. 4.5 feels about right. There is a rogue 5.5 at -105. I don't really get that. So if you are going to bet Penn State, definitely make sure you go to FanDuel for that right now. It's a great game. Do you know what happens, by the way? This is not to put you on the spot. What happens if all three of them beat each other?
It goes to tiebreakers, and the main tiebreaker will be strength of schedule in conference, which Penn State does not win. Penn State has like Northwestern. And I mean, like, Ohio State played Wisconsin. That's a big win. I forget who Michigan crosses over against, but I remember this from our preseason discussion. It is not as impressive as, or it is more impressive than Penn State. So I can't remember like, obviously this comes down to how the Big Ten West performs, and there's a huge logjam there. So I don't think it's settled down, but I know Penn State is very clearly behind Michigan and Ohio State in terms of that strength of schedule.
Michigan played Minnesota and Nebraska.
That might be enough. Both those teams are 3-2 in conference.
And Purdue.
They're bad.
Purdue's just quietly 2-7. Tough scene for Purdue. Yeah. Okay. Well, again, a lot has to happen there for that to happen, but I did want to note it. Keep it moving because we got games to get to and certainly actionable spots here. Another big time game. Ole Miss, I didn't watch any of it. I don't know if you caught it. They looked like they were in firm control against Texas A&M, and then the game tightened up quite a bit, but they did hold on to get it done. And now they find themselves in a real battle with Georgia. 11 is out there. I see that it's off the board at a lot of spots. What are you making of this game, and do you have a lean?
Yeah, it's a tough place to play. This is by far the biggest game of Ole Miss's season because they're fighting for their lives in the SEC West, and they're on the outside looking in, even if they do win this game, because of the head-to-head versus Bama, who looks like they're going to go undefeated the rest of the way with that relatively easy strength of schedule to close out. So this game might mean nothing to Ole Miss either way. They're kind of just jockeying for, I don't know, New Year's Six bowl status at this point, unless like crazy stuff happens. But Georgia, they continue to not cover spreads and let teams in games closer than they should be, according to a lot of the analytics. That's what I tentatively side with here. Another one I'm probably not going to bet. Maybe I'll take a sprinkle on Ole Miss. But Jackson Dart's playing well, 64.5% completion, 10 yards per attempt. Awesome big-time throw to turnover-worthy play ratio. He runs the ball well, 3.8 yards per carry. His O-line has been spotty of late, 26.5% pressure rate there, 66th in pass blocking. That's really what I'm concerned about here. But Georgia's worst aspect on defense is their pass rush. Very good in coverage, very good in run defense. So I don't know if they're going to exploit that. I tentatively think they will, just because Georgia's been so hurt this year. They've limited a lot of their players. And from there, Georgia, I think, can score really on anybody, even without Brock Bowers. What they did last week was awesome. Ladd McConkey, Dominic Lovett, even Ra Thomas have all stepped up. They're basically just an 11 personnel team now, whereas they were using a lot of 12 before with Bowers and Delp. So they're just winning in different ways, which is kind of what we thought would happen after. I mean, they have elite recruits at receiver too. It's just having the freak Brock Bowers changes things for a lot of teams. But yeah, Beck's been awesome. 71.5% completion, 9.1 yards per attempt, takes care of the ball, doesn't really run, but the Georgia offensive line is electric. Even without a Marius Mims, this team is 5th in pass blocking, 24th in run blocking. They don't really have a ton of injuries on defense. They did lose Jamon Dumas-Johnson at linebacker, but they're so deep at that position, I don't really know if it matters that much. I was initially concerned with like the injury to Mims and Dan Jackson and Bowers, but man, they just continually morph. And I don't think there's a team that's going to beat them in the SEC right now. What it comes down to is can Ole Miss cover the spread. They're tough to back though, man. Like, you know what Lane Kiffin's going to do. He's going to go for it on 4th downs and be super risky. Like, I think Ole Miss could upset Georgia maybe because of some of those decisions, but I also think they could lose by 30 if they don't hit on their like 4th down markers. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. So it actually, you teed me up perfectly. And I want to make sure people before, I get enough heat on Twitter because I'm betting Missouri State in basketball and they're giving up breakaway dunks with 1 second left to not cover.
That's not your fault.
No, I know but you know what? The Goblins are out there. I think the best bet in this game is Ole Miss money line. You're almost getting 4-1, and I think they can definitely win the game. I'm not saying they're going to win the game, but Ole Miss is going to play. I don't think the spread is nearly as useful in a game like this because you just mentioned it. If it goes bad, Lane is going to keep pushing. It could get away from them in a ton. I think there's scenarios where they win the game, though. I like this spot. I know Georgia's endlessly deep. I do worry about the depth being tested a little more. You mentioned the guy, I think he broke an arm. But
yeah, he did.
That's a big time piece. They got 5 stars all over the place. Yeah, if you want to take 10.5 and 11 and just play it straight up, I get it. To me, sprinkle Ole Miss money line. They can win this game.
Yeah, they can. I keep having flashbacks to that like Alabama game 2 years ago where, I don't know, Lane Kiffin said like, get your popcorn or something. It was like the most hype game in the SEC that year. And they ended up getting killed because he just couldn't hit his 4th downs. But I mean, we saw this with Oregon against Washington. You take a high variance game plan and then you implement it, you're going to get high variance results.
Which is great when you're getting nearly 4-1.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I'm all for that. I think, it's once again in Athens. This is not a great spot, but that's the only actionable piece. I want to ask you quickly, just why not? I have no take on it. 58.5 feels about right to me.
Yeah, it's over or pass. I think both offenses can score. I like the way Lane plays for that. I mean, like they're going to score or they're going to give up short fields and Georgia's just going to walk in.
100%. We just saw, you mentioned Missouri play Georgia. And now they get Tennessee. They're battling, man. This is a team that has to be treated with real respect. And I'm not saying they're getting no respect here, but they are a slight dog at home to Tennessee. Are you back in the team that's probably one of your more profitable spots when you look at your season as a whole?
They have to be my most profitable team. I think the only time I lost to them was the pick 6 in the LSU game, a game that they should have covered. But I'm going to fall back on priors and take Missouri again with this one. Love what they showed against Georgia. They were in that game the whole time, lost by single digits. Tennessee's a team I've been trying to fade all year, and it's kind of like you got to pick your spots in the SEC East because there's so many just layup teams, and they did not play a tough non-con. We're talking about like they absolutely demolished Virginia and Austin Peay. So, and they played UTSA too without Frank Harris. I mean, like, what does that tell you? They just beat up on UConn. It's one of the easiest non-cons. Rivals, honestly, Michigan. But it's funny, Joe Milton playing on Michigan, then he comes to Tennessee and plays the same non-con. Anyway, this team lost to Alabama and pretty soundly to barely beat Kentucky, beat A&M by single digits. The Florida game should have been much closer than it actually indicated. I mean, we had so many just absurd plays in that game. I don't know, man. But Tennessee's a team going back to the offseason I wasn't trying to buy. I don't like Joe Milton as a signal caller. He's fine. He's erratic. He's not very good at taking care of the ball. He's down as top receiver. He runs a little bit, playing behind a shaky offensive line, allowing a 29% pressure rate. They're outside the top 80 in both pass blocking and run blocking. Their defense has been fine in spots, but it's also interesting to me that when they face tougher competition, they've just absolutely folded. This team's supposed to have this elite pass rush, and they're ranked 9th in the country in this metric. But then you only generate 4 pressures against Alabama, who allegedly has this terrible offensive line. So I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying there's questions. They haven't really played that many good teams for an SEC team so far. And they have a ton of injuries. I mean, we ran through a couple guys on offense, Brew McCoy being the main one, but John Campbell, offensive tackle, he's been missing time. Ton on defense. Kamal Hayden, who's a corner, Keenan Peely, linebacker, Christian Charles, safety. They've all missed a ton of time this year. They didn't have Omari Thomas last week. He's their defensive tackle. And I mean, Hayden's by far their best defender. So losing him in the secondary is going to be tough against Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, Brady Cook. And to get to the Missouri guys, man, they're so talented. Burden got banged up in the game, but it looks like he's going to be fine. He was just like refusing medical attention. The guy's an absolute wagon. But even beyond him, Theo Weiss is talented. Mookie Cooper is also talented. Brady Cook, he's been excellent as well. He can run, and his efficiency metrics are absurd. 67% completion, 9 yards per attempt. I mean, turnover-worthy plays to big-time throws, the ratio is insane. 21 big-time throws, 9 turnover-worthy plays for him. They played a much more difficult schedule. LSU was on there. I mean, their non-con featured Memphis and Kansas State. So I think we've just seen way more from Missouri. And this is a team we were buying all the way in the preseason, whereas Tennessee is a team we've been trying to sell. So I'll just fall back on that and take the points for a home team here.
Yeah, I'm not going against our boys. They're awesome. They know what they're doing. And I wanted to short Tennessee. At various points this year, I was able to get in Bama live at a good spot during that game, and that was about it. Tennessee played UConn last week, by the way.
Yeah, it was absurd.
Real good. Real good stuff out there. I was keeping an eye on that game for reasons that are unknown. I want to go out to the Pac-12. I want to ask you about Utah, who's just, again, a team that has played 25 games this year somehow, and Washington. We know that Washington controls. There's no doubt about it. 9-point spread here. Again, a big-time game. There's no doubt about it. It's 9.5 in a couple spots, 8.5 in a couple other spots. Do you think that Penix just has his way with Utah, or is this a game that they could get tripped up on?
I don't think they get tripped up on them. You know me. I am no believer of Utah.
Nope.
And yeah, congratulations, Utah. Your nice bounce back win over Arizona State, who's among like bottom 10 Power 5 teams in the country. I'm sure that's going to really boost your confidence against Penix. This team is 130th in pass blocking. I don't care who plays quarterback at this point between Barnes, Nate Johnson. Throw Cam Rising back there. He's probably going to re-tear his ACL because this offensive line is so bad. On defense, they're horrific too. 92nd in run defense. People love to talk about the Utah trenches. They're horrible this year. Washington, This offensive line is elite, top 20 in both pass blocking and run blocking, top 10 in pass blocking. We just saw Dylan Johnson run all over USC's defense. USC has better run defense metrics than Utah, efficiency-wise. Dylan Johnson should have no problem running here. And then you have the sniper Penix. His receivers aren't fully healthy. I don't really care. They have everyone back except Jalen McMillan, Romo Dunes, Jalen Polk, Giles Jackson, Jeremy Bernard. They literally go 4 deep at wide receiver. That doesn't even include their tight ends, and they have Westover and Culp, multiple tight ends as well here. They got a lot of the players back last week that they lost in-game prior, so the game against USC, they actually had like a better secondary than I thought they were going to have injury-wise. The only player I'm still really a little bit worried about is Cameron Fabakulanan, who only played 1 snap at safety, but he warmed up. So I think he'll probably be back here. I mean, I don't know how you do anything against Washington's defense. They're not the best unit, but we're still talking 34th overall in defensive efficiency. That's more than enough to stop this horrific Utah offense. And then anytime Utah steps up in competition, I think we're going to see games like Oregon, where, I mean, they can't score, and then they get just demolished themselves, however offenses want to beat them. The only reason I haven't played this is because the markets, for some reason, likes Utah. And I don't know, I've just been waiting for these spots to short them all year after they clobber teams like Arizona State and then get clobbered themselves by teams like Oregon. I'll probably end up playing the Huskies, just going to wait and see.
Yeah, I'll be on it. Pac-12 has been good to me this year. I think there's a couple teams I have a good pulse on. Utah's being one of them. Didn't like them against Oregon at all. I don't think they're that good. This is not really relevant, but I want to say this, so I'm just going to say it. Third best team in the Pac-12 is Arizona.
Arizona rules, man. I love that team.
I honestly think they're the third best team in the Pac-12. Of course, you could talk Oregon State, and I'm a huge Oregon State guy. I think that Arizona is better than all these teams. It's not Utah. Get Utah out of there. They might be like 7th. They're no good.
I agree. And, yeah. I mean, they lost their best linebacker 2 weeks ago now, Lander Barton. We talked about that already. They have no offensive weapons. They're on like their 3rd-string tight end. They haven't had their center. Logan Fano and edge rushers out for the year. Like, this team stinks.
Yeah, they're not good. And I know Washington hasn't been. Go ahead. You see what? Washington. Hello? No. I will say that Washington hasn't been crisp the whole time. Stanford teams like that. But when you look at it, there you are. You're just in time for my Stanford rant.
Right. Apparently our internet sucks here. I don't know.
Times are tough. Washington will be ready for this game. They will be crisp. I think they will push the tempo a little bit. And Utah's going to have problems. I will lay the points. Any final thoughts on Utah and Washington, or are we good to move on?
No, Utah stinks.
Utah stinks. That's how we hit the hard-hitting analysis on this show. I also want to mention, you know what else we do on the show? Occasionally, we tell the people how to make a little money for not doing much of anything, I'll be honest. Now, I wish that if I was in control of the world, a lot of things would be different. But one of them, I would make everyone eligible to get $150 in bonus bets in 2 seconds. I don't control the world, but I do have 6 states for you. If you're in one of these 6 states, I got the money for you. If not, just fast forward to the next game, no problem. But here are the states: New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, Iowa, Colorado, and Kentucky. If I said your state, boom, 150 in bonus bets, courtesy of Bet365. The link is below. You click it. You throw in $10, bet $5 on your favorite college football game or any game. It really doesn't matter, because win or lose that bet, they're giving you $150. That goes right into the bankroll, and then you can use it for whatever you want. Again, any form of life, if someone said to you, take 2 minutes and here's $150, that's a pretty good hourly. I'd want to do that as often as I could, and this is the opportunity to do it. You do have to be 21 plus, only 18 in Kentucky. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, but take advantage of that. If you're lucky enough to be in one of those states, let's keep it in the Pac-12. Let's go to, USC is just a mess on a mess, and there is nothing good about going into Oregon. It's north of 2 touchdowns, though. Is this a buy low spot on USC, or is it about to get even worse for them?
I'm definitely not buying low, but I think the debate here is how much does Alex Grinch being gone benefit USC, or are they just same old USC? We saw this with Arkansas and Dan Enos, although Florida did give them plenty of points, and I think we should have gotten a Florida cover in that game. But, I mean, they changed offensive coordinators, and it looked a lot better for Arkansas. Do we see the same thing with USC moving to a different defensive play caller? I don't know. This team is awful on defense. They have to outscore opponents, and they have a willing dance partner on the other side who can definitely go blow for blow with you on offense. It's really hard for me to bet USC in any capacity at this point, especially last week. To get to 42 points, Washington had to have a punt blocked, which gave USC the ball on the 8-yard line. They also used like a ton of smoke and mirrors. They had that flea flicker bomb. Awesome play design. That works one time. They pulled that out of their bag. It's gone. Oregon now has it on film. Not going to work again. They're also really banged up. Marshawn Lloyd didn't play in their last game. You've had Michael Jackson out, one of their receivers. Say you're right, a corner. Jacoby Covington, another corner. Zion Branch has been out, their safety. The defense is already horrible. You have a lot of guys injured. Oregon is pretty healthy outside of a couple players. Noah Whittington's out for the year. I don't think that matters. They have Bucky Irving. Brian Addison's been away from the team. He's a rotational safety. Mateo Uagalele didn't play in their last game, but allegedly they were saving him. They said he could have played. He warmed up. They just didn't give him any snaps. He should be back. You essentially have a fully healthy Oregon team playing USC's awful defense. We could get into efficiency metrics for like Nix and these guys. 78% completion, 9 yards per attempt. Nix can run. They haven't needed to ask him to do that. Offensive line is probably the best in the country. They're first in pass blocking, 25th in run blocking. Irving's a wagon. They're good on defense, 16th there, 12th in coverage. That's important against Caleb Williams, who has made a ton of mistakes. Perhaps the most glaring stat for Caleb Williams this year is, he's got the 28 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He has 20 big-time throws and 16 turnover-worthy plays. The guy's running incredibly hot with people just dropping interceptions. And I mean, some of the interceptions he's had have been awful. The offensive line's not great. They continue to shuffle it. Defense, you guys know this is terrible. I think this is a lay the points or pass situation, honestly. I just cannot bet USC at this point.
Definitely lay the points or pass for me. Obviously, if this was at 13.5, it wouldn't be a conversation. I just would bet Oregon, no questions asked. I don't know what exactly I want to do. I'm in no rush to bet it. I want the Oregon side. I honestly might look to alt lines. I think there is a non-zero chance that USC is just done. Done, cooked, not there mentally, not there physically. They just are a shell of themselves, and Oregon runs over them. I still respect the team. They've got really talented pieces, but you're going into Oregon. Oregon is such a good team. I have to back them at home. Just don't love 15, 14.5. It's a lot of points for a game like this.
It is for sure.
What's the over?
USC's taking money, which I couldn't disagree with more. So I'm just waiting to see if we get a 14. Otherwise, I'm probably going to play whatever numbers out there. I agree with the alt line stuff.
Yeah, that's fine with me. Maybe a Oregon team 45 points, 50 points for Oregon feels about right. Like, gives you a lot. They'll be ready. And yeah, there's no chance I bet USC. So you could just rule that out. All right. Just bad. Back to the SEC we go. Alabama. Got it done last week. They're starting to really find it. Kind of a sleepy spot, 10.5 on the road in Kentucky. The problem I have is I don't think Kentucky's any good. Is that what you see, or do you think maybe Alabama actually gets tripped up here?
I don't think they get tripped up. Again, they control their own destiny. They have no look-ahead spots the whole year. Luckily, they just don't have any really good opponents left on the schedule. Kentucky's fine. They're middling SEC East team. Their worst player has been Devin Leary. He's actually coming off a pretty good game, but still 57% completion, 7.5 yards per attempt, same amount of big-time throws, turnover-worthy plays. The offensive line has really good tackle play, but their interior has been awful. They continue to shake up the players starting on the interior, and they can't run block. They're 94th there. They're much better at pass blocking. That's a pretty big issue against Alabama. They're not the team you just want to throw the ball over. They're third in coverage. They do have a couple injuries. Deontay Lawson and Jalen Key were both called day-to-day. I mean, this defense is still pretty deep and very talented. Awesome pass rush, top 10 there. And then again, they're third in coverage in the country. Kentucky, they play really slow, but they throw the ball a ton with Leary, who's, I mean, not even the strength of their offense. So I don't know here. It's hard for me to back Kentucky's offense as turnover prone as Leary is facing an elite defense. And then on the other side, man, we've seen some pretty good changes from Alabama recently. Starting in the Tennessee game, their offensive line kind of got things under control. And then against LSU, man, I love what they did using Jalen Milroe as a runner. The guy was over 9 yards per attempt, but they didn't throw it with him a ton. They used his mobility, made the defense respect it, and then buried you over the top with deep passes. And they demolished LSU. Now, we need to at least mention LSU's down 4 corners, 4 defensive backs, I should say. So it was definitely an easier matchup for Milroe, but he's still executing, and he can do what he did on the ground against anybody. I don't buy Kentucky's defense. They're 67th, 73rd against the run, 85th in pass rush, 54th in coverage. I'm thinking about laying the points with Bama. It's another spot where we don't have a good number. You got that 10 and a hook, but it's going to be Bama or pass.
It's hard to say anything else, honestly. Yes, I will agree. LSU was using, not that I know that team inside and out, they were using apparently true fresh guys I've never heard of back there. They were decimated on the outside, but Milroe is just on fire right now. I think they're a more dynamic team. The defense was always, that secondary you're not going to be able to throw on Alabama. It's just like Oregon. I'm definitely not betting Kentucky. I'll probably end up betting Alabama. If it gets to 10 or, God willing, 9.5, I 100% will bet Alabama. I don't think they lose, and I think there's a good chance they steamroll Kentucky and just move on to bigger, better things.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Georgia Tech and Clemson. Maybe we'll get that on the Thursday show. A little egregious hour. They don't make the big time show. Of course, it is a perfect time to mention, as always, our Thursday episode. If you want the real shady games, let us know. Hit us in the comments. Tweet at us at Matt_Gajewski, at JazzRazDFS. Let us know what you want for that. We're happy to talk any game in the world. Don't really care. We're about to talk Texas Tech and Kansas. This Jayhawk team has been a staple of your betting card for a lot of weeks now. They're back at home, 3.5-point spread. Is this another spot where you're looking to back them, or does Texas Tech, who actually battled during the week last week, look pretty good? Can they cause some problems here?
Yeah, I love this Kansas team, especially with the current rendition we see, Jason Bean. He's been excellent, really good running the ball. And then as a passer, 61% completion, 9.5 yards per attempt, takes care of the ball relatively well. Offensive line's pretty good, 18% pressure rate. They're 18th in pass blocking, 9th in run blocking. Get good production out of their runners. Devin Neal and Daniel Highshaw have both been excellent for them. Their defense is okay. They've made a jump year over year, about from 90-ish up to 62nd. They don't really have a strength or a weakness, I should say, but they're kind of balanced everywhere in this like average category. They did lose Mello Dotson, their best corner in their last game. He's their highest graded defender and by far their best player. But it actually looks like he might return, which is, I think, promising for this team. I thought he might miss the rest of the season after seeing that injury. But apparently he's doing better than we thought. Texas Tech isn't a team I've been buying. Their defense is bad, 90th overall, 96th against the run. That's going to be a huge problem against Devin Neal in this offensive line. They're also 84th in coverage. So when Kansas does throw the ball against you, which they do situationally with Bean and Luke Grimm and those receivers, they should find success. On offense, Texas Tech is 66th. Pretty good offensive line themselves, 21st in pass blocking, 41st in run blocking. They do have a ton of injuries on defense, especially. They do have guard Cole Spencer out, so I think that hurts their offensive line a little bit. But probably should have highlighted this earlier. Tyreek Matthews, Chapman Lewis, they've both been out for a while now. Steve Linton missed their last game. He's an edge rusher. I don't know what they're doing at linebacker. This is like a really weird approach to me and just tells me this team's not really playing for anything. They're basically just mixing and matching freshman linebackers until they get their 4 games, and then they bench them for the rest of the year to preserve red shirts. Jacob Rodriguez has 2 games left. Apparently he's not going to play in the Texas game. Mike Dingle's already done. He's reached his 4 games. John Curry has 1 game left. And then according to their coach, their plan is to use Justin Horn. So, it doesn't seem like this team really cares. Their best players are some of their freshmen because of injuries, but it's like they're preserving the red shirt above like winning games. So, man, I don't know what this team is doing. Especially like, why are you preserving the red shirt anyway? Like any one of these players could transfer at any given time, and then it doesn't matter if they redshirted or not. They're already out of your program. So I don't know. Like I'm confused with Texas Tech. End of story. Have Kansas rated ahead of them on offense significantly, 9th in overall efficiency to Texas Tech 66th. Then on defense, Kansas 62nd, Texas Tech 90th. Think that's worth more than the 3.5.
Particularly at home.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm with you. Kansas, I've been not looking for spots to back them because I have backed them in spots, but I actually feel pretty good about this. They feel like a little more stabilized, and you just mentioned Texas Tech's doing some weird stuff. I'm a little pissed at myself. I wanted to bet them last week, and I didn't, but I didn't learn anything that I don't think changed how I evaluate Texas Tech. Again, TCU's got issues. This is a team that lost to BYU just 2 weeks ago. Not great for them. Now, sticking in the Big 12. This is the game. If I could only ask you about like I said, I'm lucky enough to get to do the show. I can ask you all sorts of weird stuff, even when the camera's not on. But I wanted to ask you about this game. If I was going to ask you about one game this week, it was going to be this very game, and it's Oklahoma State going into the bounce house against UCF. I don't know if I'm forcing it or I really believe it. I don't like this spot for Oklahoma State. This feels like a perfect spot for them to get knocked off, but it's only 2.5 points. Is that something that you're considering, or is that just not enough points and you want to go to the Cowboys side?
I bet UCF at +3. Sounds like this has moved. Yeah,
it has moved. There are some, -2.5, -120s on the OK State side to give you an indication that I wouldn't be shocked to see threes pop back up.
Yeah, I think that's probably around the right number here. So not running to the window to bet UCF right now, but I did already take it at the +3. If you wait, you could probably get that number back. But I do think this is a tough spot for them. Long road spot. Anytime you have to travel to the bounce house in this conference, it's not going to be easy. But this team, I think, has been running pretty hot in terms of their efficiency metrics. They should have some losses in conference, especially. The Kansas game, I think, is the biggest one you could point to, where they were outgained 7.9 yards per attempt to 7 yards per attempt themselves. Bowman's been good, but he's still operating as largely a game manager. 58.7 completion percentage for 6.6 yards per attempt. Those aren't the best efficiency metrics. 12 big-time throws, 10 turnover-worthy plays. He's been living good. I will say the offensive line is excellent for this team. They're only allowing a 17% pressure rate, which is solid. But they're also down 3 receivers, Jaden Bray, Blaine Green, Talon Sheetron. Unfortunately, Leon Johnson's been very good in their absence. But then on defense, this team is 87th. They're 123rd against the run and 57th in coverage. Well, that is about the worst stylistic matchup for this defense. On the other side, in UCF, who's an electric running attack with Harvey and their signal caller, John Rice Plumlee, who has excellent mobility. He's also been pretty good as a passer if you can just overlook some of the turnover-worthy plays. We'll discuss that in a second, but 63.5% completion, 8.5 yards per attempt, 7 interceptions, 7 turnover-worthy plays. That's that exact 1-to-1 ratio we referenced last week with Plumlee. Usually you're seeing that at roughly like 2-to-1. So almost every single turnover that could occur has occurred. This is the polar opposite of Caleb Williams, who has almost 20 turnover-worthy plays and only 4 interceptions. But his rushing has been awesome, 5.2 yards per carry. O-line's good here, 19% pressure rate, and they're top 30 in both pass blocking and run blocking. Defense is okay. They're not really strong anywhere. They're not weak anywhere either. I think OK State has plenty of success themselves, but in what looks like it could be a potential shootout environment, I'll take the home team. I'll take the healthier offensive team. And I'll take John Rice Plumlee and that dual threat ability against this pathetic Oklahoma State run defense.
I mean, like I said, I've been waiting. I've been unsuccessfully shorting Oklahoma State. I had Kansas against them. And one of the things that, again, I'm not trying to just poke holes for the sake of poking holes. Oklahoma State is on a 5-game win streak. You know, they lost to South Alabama. They lost to Iowa State. Then they've won 5 straight games. 4 of them have been at home. 4 home games. They went on the road. And they beat West Virginia by a couple scores. And that game was very close. I watched it. West Virginia had 3 turnovers in that game. This is not the same as teams coming into Stillwater, where it's always difficult to play. And stylistically, there's no doubt that UCF would face this type of defense every single game if they could. Doesn't mean they win. If it hits 3, I'm betting it. If it doesn't hit 3, I'll probably just bet the money line because I do think UCF is, of course, live when you're only a 2.5-point home dog.
Yeah, I agree with you. I already took this.
Put it on the board. We got a couple games left. And again, we got plenty more for Thursday as well. I do want to mention, I got this question every day or every week, I should say. And I love the question. It's, what is this odds screen? This is on oddshopper.com. It's completely free to get this odds screen. It's just under odds. You can do it for any sport. It'll show you what book, current numbers, and you can go and quickly get the best line available. If you want more than that, of course, we have all sorts of tools, including some free tools, premium tools. I'll just show you this real quick. Give you a sneak peek. Obviously, there's no NBA tonight, so we're littered with a little college football, some NHL. I'm sure college basketball will be coming through as well. Just all sorts of spots. It's an EV market-based approach. If you are interested in taking it to the next level, come see what we're about. You can sign up for a week and see if you like it. If you don't, now you saw what we got, and maybe in the future you come back. But we're confident you will stick with it and like what you see because you'll be making some money. Let's make some more money here with Texas and TCU. Didn't see the game. Saw Texas was in firm control. Never thought about it. And then I turned it on, and they're in just overtime in straight banana land against Kansas State. I don't even know what happened in that game. Talk to me about Texas and talk to me about TCU.
Yeah, a couple of wild teams and tough teams to talk about right now because of the QB injuries. But I think we might get both guys back here. Quinn Ewers is allegedly ahead of schedule, and he threw in practice yesterday. We record this on Tuesday morning, so a Monday throwing session is pretty good for Ewers, and I do think he matters. We've seen a pretty stark difference in efficiency metrics between him and Malik Murphy, even though Malik Murphy's done just enough to get them victories. Ewers has a 70% completion. Malik Murphy's at 55 yards per attempt. Ewers is at 8.9. Malik Murphy at 6.6. Murphy is negative in terms of big time throw to turnover worthy play ratio. Ewers is at least positive. And then Ewers runs a little more than Malik Murphy, which is kind of crazy to say considering Ewers has 53 rushing yards. But the offensive line is great for Texas, 14.5% pressure rate. They've been good really across the board. Defense is solid too. They're 22nd in that metric, just overall efficiency. TCU could get back Chandler Morris, similar to Ewers returning. He warmed up last week, didn't end up playing, allegedly was only there for emergency purposes, but he suited up. I mean, you have to think he's probably pretty close. It's a similar gap in efficiency with Chandler Morris to Josh Hoover, similar to the Texas situation. And Morris, he's an electric runner. He has 249 yards this year. That's 5.5 yards per carry on the ground, 65.5% completion, 7.6 yards per attempt. TCU is pretty good across the board. They're 59th on defense, 50th in coverage. I have Texas power rated slightly ahead of them, really in like every single category. Overall offensive efficiency, Texas is 26th. TCU 33rd. Offensive line, a little better for Texas. Defense, I have TCU 59th. Texas, I have at 22nd. So to me, the question is, do we think that is enough to warrant this gap in the spread? Because you could get double digits with TCU as the underdog. What I think I'm going to lean to here is the over, though, if both these quarterbacks are back, which I think there's a pretty good chance they will be. I think you could see more points than what the current total is projecting. The over's already taken money. It's up to 54 in a lot of spots from 53.5. I haven't played it myself because I'd love to get some news on Ewers and Chandler Morris throughout the week, but that's where I'm tentatively siding for now.
There's a 53.5 out there on DraftKings right now at minus 110, so you can still find that. If you don't get word, would you still be okay having a position on the over?
Yeah, I think there's a pretty good chance they're both going to play. So I think it's the 53.5 I'd play if you can find it. Seems like most of you in legal states can. Yep. I don't have it in Wisconsin, sadly.
Toughest of scenes. All right. Florida and LSU. Always a big-time matchup when these two play. It's not the Chris Leak Florida LSU games of years past. I don't know why I thought of Chris Leak, but that's who I thought of. Death Valley, 7 p.m. kickoff, 2 touchdown spreads, 63-point total. I know we don't believe or play the narrative or unquantifiable game theory. What the hell does LSU really have left at this point?
Not Jaden Daniels. He's in concussion protocol.
He took it was definitely obviously a penalty. He took a shot. Oof.
He certainly did. And in today's day and age, I think it's probably unlikely he plays in this game. It's very rare for players to receive clearance on 1 week's rest, especially with their season being lost. They're basically playing for a New Year's Six Bowl. What motivation does Daniels have to rush back other than love of the game, which he does seem to love, but I mean, now we have to quantify the drop-off between Daniels to Nussmeier. And I think the main one is just Nussmeier is not going to run like Daniels. I think the guy can run a little bit like functional mobility, but Daniels is the best rushing quarterback in the country. You cannot duplicate what he does on the ground. The offensive line is good. So, again, I think Nussmeier will be fine. It's just really hard to project an offense when Daniels, he should win the Heisman, man. He is the best signal caller in the country. And I think if you actually were looking at most valuable player to a team, he has to be the guy. And then on the other side, man, this secondary is atrocious. I don't know who we get back, if anybody. Zy Alexander, Deuce Chestnut, Denver Harris are still all missing time. They didn't have Mekhi Wingo last game. He's not going to come back for a while. His timeline allegedly was the playoff, but probably looking at a season ender for him now because newsflash, they're not making the playoff. I think Graham Mertz can throw on this secondary. If we could see some of these injuries persist, Graham Mertz has been awesome. 73.5% completion, 8.1 yards per attempt. He's taking care of the ball just fine. O-line continues to improve now that they're not suspending guys left and right, and they're healthier. So I think that's a big mismatch exploit that Florida has in their favor. Defense, I'm a little worried. They had a ton of guys out, and I think that's part of why we saw Arkansas run all over them. Shamar James, the linebacker, he missed time. Cameron Jackson was out, defensive tackle. Tyreek Sapp, edge rusher, was out. They lost Jack Pyburn, another edge in the game. A third edge, TJ Searcy, went down in the game. So, of course, we see the first 100-yard game for Raheem Sanders and KJ Jefferson all year. But, I mean, they were down 6 guys in their front 7 on defense. So, I mean, I don't know if those guys return. That's a concern for me. Right now, I think you can just lay off. And then if we get the Daniels news, look to Florida. And if Daniels plays, I would have a lot more interest in an over. We're sitting in kind of weird spots with the numbers right now, given the lack of information.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. When you see this board right now and 14, do you think that prices in Daniels not playing or him playing?
I think it's him playing.
So do I, which is kind of weird because I don't think he's going to play.
I don't think he is either. He could, man.
Yeah, he could. I don't know.
It's very rare. Players almost never clear protocol in a week now.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by that. That's all, because I think it's pretty clear to me if they rule him in, and obviously with a concussion, you're not going to be limited. I don't think this moves that much.
I don't think it does either.
But if he's ruled out, 10-ish,
probably he's worth a ton.
Yeah, he is worth a ton. I don't know. That's just a really weird spot. I'll keep an eye on it. But yeah, there's a part of me that wants to blindly back Florida and say, okay, even if I get the worst run out, I have a pretty efficient line. And then there's scenarios where I steal 2 or 3 points before I even did anything.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of the early Utah games where people thought Rising was going to play.
Yep. It's the same kind of situation. And if you were blindly willing to do that, depending on where they priced it, I thought that was a pretty interesting strategy. But again, we will keep an eye on it. All right. We have talked about a bunch of games. We have put some bets on the board. As always, we always ask if you want to like and subscribe and share. Tell people about this show. We want to build it up. If you're on podcast, please rate and review. Let people know that we're out here because we want to make this the biggest show, not just on this channel, but on all channels. We want this leading the college football world and college basketball when that takes full swing. But more importantly than that, if you got that money from Bet365, you got some extra funds in the bankroll, talk to me about where you're going. If you had a couple bets to make, put us for your best bets on the board.
3 favorites. We're going to start with Missouri again.
Oh, yeah.
They're the wagon of the year. Love their offensive skill position players, Burden, Weiss, Cook, facing a Tennessee team which has been relatively untested considering they're an SEC East team. Of course, they've had their battles, but they played a complete joke of a non-con schedule, whereas Missouri's been tested week in and week out. The injury to Burden scared me a little bit, but I was happy that he came back in the game. So I think if you can find Missouri at a dog price, that is lovely. I like them through 0. I think alt line somewhere around -3 or even in play there as well. Second for me is Kansas against Texas Tech. Have them as the superior team really across the board. Texas Tech and Baron Morton, they've had some injuries on both sides of the ball, whereas Kansas is relatively healthy, except for Mello. I think he actually might play. He's their best corner, but we'll see on him. Either way, Kansas being the home team here. Wish we could get a 3, but I think 3.5 is fine. And then finally, I'm going to sell Oklahoma State, having to travel down to the bounce house against UCF. +3 is the number I took. It's been bouncing back and forth. I think if you wait, you'll still be able to find a +3. So if you're sitting at 2.5, you don't really have a large incentive to bet it right now. I think you can wait and probably just hit this if it gets back to 3, which I think there's a good chance that it will. But those will be my 3.
Yeah, those are, I have absolutely no pushback on any of them. I'm going to add one more, as I always do. I'm going to go out west. I just don't believe in Utah. I'm going to lay 9, 8.5, whatever you can get with Washington. As you mentioned, I don't think it's an urgent situation. Certainly don't let yourself get caught at 10. But if you want to wait around, it seems to be going the other direction right now. Too much Penix, too much Johnson. Utah doesn't have anything. They're on the road. Bad spot for them. Give me Washington by double digits this week. What a beautiful little start to the college football card. Of course, again, if you have any questions at all, at Matt_Gajewski, at JazzRazDFS on X on Twitter. And we're going to be breaking down all the games. Thursday especially, we got some real shady games that are going to make the show. Maybe even, let's say, FIU, Middle Tennessee State. Hopefully not. That might be above
I'm
our
betting that game. We're going to talk about it.
Okay, fine. You see, that's why you want to tune back here at Odd Chopper. We got you covered for everything. We're going to bounce on out of here. Again, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you guys. For me, for Matt, and for everyone here at Odd Chopper, good luck. Enjoy this Saturday slate. We'll talk to you guys soon.